Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I'm the founder and lead curator of Deeper Into Movies. We are a pop-up cinema based in London and New York. Today on the pod, I'm joined by actor James Duval. James, you will know from playing Frank in Donnie Darko. He was the guy in the bunny suit, and he was the lead in all of Gregg Araki's classic movies. James, I've wanted to speak to you for so long because if you've listened to the pod before, you know, talking to people whose movies I grew up watching and had such an effect on me, these pods really hit different. And James is such a lovely, warm guy. I think he's very special, and you'll feel that from the conversation. Okay, this is a good one. This is me and James Duval. How's it going, James?
Good. How are you doing, Steve?
Good. This is a very good backdrop you've got behind you.
Oh, thank you. I'm staying with a friend, and we had this Trilogy screening last night and came back here and just played music all night. And believe it or not, I passed out right underneath these guitars.
No way. What's your instrument of choice?
I love playing the guitar, but right now, believe it or not, I'm playing bass. I started playing bass in a band for a gentleman named Richard E., who's a very, very talented musician I met through David J. from Bauhaus and Love and Rockets.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he met and he's like, oh, Jimmy plays bass. And he's like, oh, would you like to play bass with me? I'm like, well, send me the bass stems, send me the song. Let me see if I can play it first. And he sent him. I was like, yeah, I could do that. So now I'm playing with the band.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if we go back, what kind of teenager were you? What were you growing up watching and listening to? What kind of made a big impact on you?
With music, I was very much into alternative music, like the Smiths, The Cure, Depeche Mode, Echo and the Bunnymen, Joy Division, New Order, Bauhaus, Love and Rockets. That was very much my wheelhouse in high school. And I remember when I started to get into movies, there was an art house theater in one of the cities I lived in Hermosa Beach called the Bijou. And they had a movie there by Peter Greenway called The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover.
Yeah.
And when I saw that at 17, and so the beginning of that movie starts off, and so I've never really seen independent movies at this point, just major studio films.
Yeah.
You know, it's the normal fare that they feed to the American public. And I go watch this movie, and very young Michael Gambon is like a gangster who ends up being I think he's the thief in the movie, ends up beating this guy up, having his thugs beat him up. Then the dog takes a shit, and then he pisses they wipe the dog shit in the guy's mouth. This is the beginning. And then He pulls his pants down and he pees in his mouth and he's like, to wash it down with. And I'm like, oh, I was horrified. I've never seen anything like that on film. And I was strangely attracted to it. Not necessarily the shit, but the fact that they could take it so far. And that movie goes to so many places and did so many things that I didn't know. First, I went through a variety, an array of emotions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Challenging what I thought, challenging what I felt. But I was stimulated by it. And it was beautiful because Peter Greenway is such a beautiful painter, artist as well. I didn't know that at the time. So the cinematography and the colors, they were out of this world. And as I finished the movie, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop talking about it. And I began to understand before my film education that that's what movies and music were. Same thing, something that sticks with you, that you can't stop thinking about it, and it just churns and it makes you think and it makes you go over things. And that horrific fascination inspired this growth in me to start challenging and finding things in life to really kind of understand who I was. You know, at 17 and 18, I don't know who I am. I'm trying to figure out who I am, what I'm about, what the world is. And in a strange way, independent movies, and that was a catalyst for it. And meeting Gregg as well, and then learning about John Waters and Gus Van Sant and a lot of the emerging filmmakers at the time. You know, Richard Linklater. I think the first movie I saw was Slacker. So I'm seeing all these films with indie filmmakers before they, were making these big movies and kind of understanding it. And it was that kind of really attracted me into the film business. And it certainly didn't hurt that when I met Gregg Araki, he had exact same taste in music. So for us, music is actually a bigger inspiration. So music is our first inspiration, then movies are our second. So we found that we loved the exact same music. And then he wrote this script and he's been able to articulate how I felt. And I couldn't do it verbally.
Right. I was thinking it's interesting going back when you're discovering weird, alternative and fucked up movies in transgressive cinema.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I said this recently that I didn't know this was extreme or alternative when you first take it in. The more you grow and the more you understand, you kind of realize, because I was thinking back when I was about 13, it was my birthday. My sister was like, enough videos and CDs. Can I buy you some books? And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. But then I was like, okay, well, I'm into grunge, so I know about William Burroughs, so I want to get junky and queer. And then Joy Division referenced J.G. Ballard, so I want J.G. Ballard. and then I'm walking away like, this is and then I love Lesson Zero, so I was like, I need American Psycho now. And looking back, I was like, this was some heavy shit for a 13-year-old boy, but I had no context for it. Books don't have certificates, which is really cool that anyone can buy anything,
and you can just read it and it takes you further than that movie will take you.
Yeah. Or when I saw like Blue Velvet as a teenager or things like that.
That was another movie that starting off with the ear in the front, and you're like, what is it? Oh my God, that's an ear, and you're horrified, but you're also strangely fascinated and attracted to it. And you can't take your eyes off of it.
It's great when you have you're not a kind of a music snob or a film snob yet. You don't really have your tastes or what's good and what isn't. It's just if it hits you and it affects you.
That's all that's important.
It's great.
Nothing else matters. Just that it affects you.
Yeah, that's a really pure standpoint to start accessing art from.
Yeah, and that was very much my experience.
I wish I wasn't that cynical guy like, they sound like a mix of this band and this band. Therefore,
unfortunately, as we get older, I'm guilty of the same. I don't
you can't help it.
I try not to, but it's hard not to because you have so much more frame of reference to draw from as well.
Yeah, and I never want to be that moody older guy of like, have you kids ever heard of Slow Dive? Because that's all this band is trying to do. I don't want to be that. I remember seeing them, and I don't want to be that guy. I'm like,
I'm just
whatever's your first gateway to that type of music is gonna blow your fucking mind. Wherever it's
it's great to see the new generation they love Slow Dive now. They brought them back.
It's a beautiful thing.
Brought them back
because I never thought they got the love and respect they deserved.
They never did.
The first time
they
round.
Never did, and because of Gregg's movies, we became pretty close with them. But we didn't meet them until after Slow Dive dissolved. So we knew them as Mojave 3. That's when we first met them.
Right.
And I love Mojave 3 too.
Same, yeah.
But the entire time, Gregg and I are like, when are you going to do Slow Dive? Like everybody wants to say, like, nobody wants to see Slow Dive. Nobody ever likes Slow Dive. And we're like, you're wrong. You're wrong. Like everybody loves Slow Dive. And I guess sometimes it just takes a little time, but
it does. You kind of got to go out of fashion to come into fashion. There's very few people who can remain. Someone like Aphex Twin can just always remain in trend,
and Aphex never goes out. Yeah,
but
it's too weird to be in or out.
Yeah, that's rare as hell to maintain that level of success. But I think guitar music, especially, and whatever rock is deemed as, and the time is going to go in and out.
Well, it's like seeing Oasis go, and then they come back. Now they're back.
But now I'm that old guy who's like, I saw them when I went to the Nebworth tour when I was 15, and I had to have
You were at the Nebworth show. That was huge.
Yeah. My mom was out of town. She was going on holiday to Ireland, and my dad was home, and I was like, all right, hear me out. I need to go all the way to Nebworth to see this band. And my dad was like, this has stressed me out, even the thought of it. It's like, usually your mom can make these decisions. And he was like, no. And my mom was like, you got to. And it was this whole negotiation process, but he let me go in the end.
So Oasis, I know from Gregg as well. Gregg was like, they started releasing all those singles. He's like, Oasis. So I go and I listen to Oasis. I buy all the singles. There's 5 singles. Where's the album? There's 5 singles. There's no album.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's coming. And then what comes? Definitely maybe comes. And we're all jaw on the floor. Like, are you kidding me? It was such a great time for music in that then too. The 90s was a great time for music.
It was. I was wondering, how did all the shoegaze bands process Gregg's movies? Were they like, what's with the, the violence and the sex and the aliens and the apocalypse, or did they just dig it?
They just dug it. Honestly, I was very surprised. They just dug it. So when we did Totally Fucked Up, which is like a $20,000 movie that wasn't big on any level, to have Ride give us Vapor Trail, I still to this day, I'm like, said it and I got goosebumps. Like I got goosebumps from thinking about it, that Ride just gave us that song, because I think what they did understand about those movies, and I think they did watch them, is they understood that these movies are about love. And like all the chaos that exists within love. And a lot of that shoegaze music is like love with this beautiful chaos in the middle of it. Like, just walls.
That's true, sound. Yeah.
But it's like heartbreaking, a lot of it.
Yeah, there's a kind of a tenderness to the violence.
And the violence would be those walls of sound, but there's a beauty in that violence. And it's like Gregg's movies. Some of it's very violent, but there's a beauty in his movies and his characters that you cannot deny.
Absolutely. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming platform bringing you the best in cinema. I've been a Mubi subscriber for years, and I want to shout out some films on the Mubi UK platform. Okay, number one. This is a great movie. It's called My First Film, and it's the debut from Zia Anger, and it follows her journey kind of / metafiction in making her first film. It's really great. It's really personal. Devon Ross is in it and she's great. Odessa Young is great. And if any of you guys have just been through the creative process in any medium, you'll have a hard relate. This was a great debut. That's my number one pick. Number two, Love by Gaspar Noé. This was a great movie. Did I see it in 3D? I think I saw it in 3D. Wow. Maybe I blacked out that experience, but I think I definitely did, because I saw it in Hackney Picture House and there was a power cut during the movie. That bit I remember. Did I put on glasses? Anyway, I digress. Okay, and my final pick is... they've got Revenge on the channel. Revenge is really like a dark 70s woman revenge movie, and I loved this. This was so great. It feels like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or I Spit on Your Grave. It's got that really dark, visceral look and tone of those movies, and it's great. It's a woman on a killing spree and she's getting revenge, just as the title suggests. And she's gone on to make The Substance, so that's another movie release. So yeah, go watch Revenge, get primed for The Substance, and do all of these. Here's the good bit. You can watch all these movies and more for free. Just go to mubi.com/deeper into movies. That's mubi.com/deeper into movies. And if you want to get ready for the 2-hour plus body horror mayhem, go check out mubi.com/substance. So what was it like when you obviously did Totally Fucked Up, but I was wondering when you walked onto Doom Generation set, what was it like with the the bigger budget, the polka dot sets and things like that. Did it take a while to get into Gregg's world, or did you, by then I guess you might have had a shorthand where you kind of understood each other?
By then, we definitely had a shorthand. And I remember, it's a huge compliment. He's like, Jimmy, if there's any problems, you come to me. I'm so glad you're here because you made movies with me before and you know what it's like making movies. So I was able to explain it to Jonathan and Rose, because we were all very intimate and filming together, and they had not worked with him before. But at the same time, that was true. But when we made Totally Fucked Up, we made it for 20 grand with like a crew of 3 people. It was very intimate. There was almost nobody there.
Yeah.
So now we are on this massive movie with the full crew, full camera, makeup, wardrobe, all this stuff that never existed before. And it was new as it was to me. It was new to Gregg. It was overwhelming, to be quite honest. But we fell into it pretty quickly, to be quite honest, because Gregg is no nonsense when he makes into movies. He knows what he wants to capture and how to capture it. And that's the joy of working with him. So by the time he casts it, he's casting people that he can just let us go. And so he kind of just lets us go and makes these adjustments. And because it was such a quick, tough shoot, it's 4 weeks, 6-day weeks, 12, 14-hour days, 1 day off a week to sleep, and that was it. So it was integral that we were always, every day, in the moment, trying to get what we needed done so we could finish the day and get to the next day. And I still think we went over 3 days, but in all fairness, the major LA Northridge quake that flattened the city hit the second day of filming.
Fuck.
So we filmed, the city was in shambles, couldn't get gas at some places, but Gregg, showed up to set on the day of the earthquake. No one's there. Go home, get a call. Hey guys, sorry, the earthquake delayed things, but the generator's powered up, so we'll see you at 11 on set. And you're like, oh my God,
wow.
we're in the middle of a disaster scenario. We have to film.
Yeah, very on brand.
Yeah. And so that, in a way, now had this and added this desperation to the shoot that didn't exist. And it really felt like we were doomed, like we were in an apocalyptic world. And so it did another urgency, not just to the actors, but to the crew, because everyone was apprehensive. So if you watch the scene where Xavier goes, we go to the Quickie Mart, he goes in, he gets pies, and he tells me that he just slept with Amy. And then he goes, snip my finger. If you look really closely in that scene, I think Gregg was able to get rid of most of it, but there's a slight shaking where you see the pendant hanging from the side rearview mirror swinging.
Right.
And that's from the earthquake. Because while we were shooting it, I remember seeing a DP dive and hug the camera, because it's a $500,000 camera. And he's holding it, and the car is shaking and the camera's shaking. And it's like,
holy shit.
Okay, aftershocks done. Mark it, lights, camera, action. And so you're literally going into it, or being in the back of a car hitch and shooting in a valley, and the car is so big that you can't open the doors, so they had to hotwire the windows to put us in the car. Then they put Jonathan Rose and I in the car. Then they have to hotwire the windows shut for sound, so we can't get out now. You're filming in a ravine, and aftershock hits, and you see landslides start to come, and they just stop and pull over, and you're sitting locked in this car like, guys, we can't even get out. If this comes down, we're all dead. And so that added a sense of urgency. There was a couple times where Jonathan Rose and I am like, we're locked in the car, right? Like, none of us know how to hotwire that window open. It's going to be lie on your back and kick the window out and get out. And
wow, could you even get away with stuff like that now? Maybe, I don't know. That's real guerrilla.
It was. I mean, we had permits to do all that stuff, but I don't think they would do that these days. Like shoot in the middle of aftershocks and things like that.
Yeah.
But if we didn't do it, we would not have finished that movie. And much to Gregg's credit, he was able to keep all of us, crews and actor, together in the midst of even more chaos than what a movie normally is.
And how soon after Doom Generation was Independence Day? Was that before Nowhere, or?
So that's a great question. So after I did Independence Day, I met the director of or after I finished Doom Generation, I got a job as a waiter in a restaurant, and I met the director of Stargate there, and he had actually seen Totally Fucked Up
no way.
In Sundance. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And he was like,
Ronald Emmerich?
Yeah, I was waitering, and he goes, Totally Fucked Up. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
How do you know that movie's not even out? It just played at Sundance. He goes, well, I was at Sundance. I love that movie. I love Gregg's movies. I love The Living End too. Are you still acting? And I'm like, yeah, can I take your order? Like, so what do you have coming? I'm like, well, believe it or not, I did another movie with Gregg Araki called The Doom Generation. It's going to be at Sundance. You should come. He's like, I'm at Sundance every year. I'll see you there. We show at Sundance. The movie like people are freaked out by it, honestly.
Yeah.
Walking out, Samuel Goldwyn picked us up and then dropped us. Like, it was this controversial movie. And I remember walking down to do the Q&A, and I knew we'd made this crazy movie, but I was committed and I'm okay with it. So when Roland tapped me on the shoulder, and I'm like, Roland, you're here. And he looked up at me from the seat. He goes, Jimmy, this movie, oh my God. And I'm like, well, that's another, mark that up. I won't be working with him.
Right.
But that's okay. I go up and I'm feeling really good about it. And we come back from Sundance. He doesn't come back into the restaurant. And then 3 weeks later, he finally shows up and goes, Jimmy, wow, that movie was amazing. I can't believe you guys did that. Like, that's my favorite movie at the festival. In fact, Dean and I just got back from writing Independence Day. What are you doing this summer? There's this part you'd be great for.
No way.
And I'm like, well, believe it or not, I'm shooting another movie with Gregg Araki called Nowhere. And maybe we can make it work out. So I ended up auditioning for Roland like a month later and getting the part in Independence Day, and the movies were shooting at the same time. And the studio didn't want me. 20th Century Fox, like, we don't know him. Does this weird Gregg Araki movie. Like, no. The Doom Generation, no fucking way. Yeah. And Roland's like, I don't care what you say. That's who I want. I want him in the movie. And they go, well, the films are filming at the same time. It's conflicting, so he can't do it. So Roland and Gregg and their producers got on the phone personally and worked out a schedule where I filmed the first week of Nowhere in LA. Then I finished, got on a plane, flew to Utah, changed my part, took my earrings out, shot for a week in Utah on Independence Day, went back to LA, put my earrings back in, put my part back in, finished shooting Nowhere, and then went back and finished shooting Independence Day. So I shot those concurrently, literally 1 week on a movie, 1 week back and forth.
Dude, that's crazy.
Because you don't see it, right? You can't tell.
No.
I'm so happy to hear that.
No, one, again, not to sound like such a Gen Xer, but
that's our generation. It's a good generation.
Of course,
good generation.
I'm gonna go on record. It was the best.
It's the best.
It was the best. But how crazy is that you had to just hope you'd see him again in the diner or whatever you were working?
Like, I had no clue.
No emails, no kind of thing like that. Just like that happenstance, or if you want to make it, I don't know. I always kind of feel if you want to meet that person or track that person down again, you will, but you're really going to have to.
It's like almost like, it's either going to be fate or you're going to have to be really lucky
or persistent. Yeah.
And so it was completely unexpected. So meeting Gregg and making movies with Gregg was a pivotal moment for me, where I started to figure out who I was, what I was about, and what I wanted to do. And meeting Roland was the next step. And those are the two moments in my life.
So how is it straddling those two super different sets? Both with the apocalypse looming, but I mean the budgets and how was that for you, jumping from a DIY set to a tentpole blockbuster Hollywood?
It was so wildly different, but at the same time, it was effortless for me. I'm so comfortable on both. But I wouldn't say that so much. I'm comfortable on a huge set. So Roland was very much in the same way. He's in control of his set. So everybody that works for him are wonderful people. All the actors who work for him are wonderful people. He does not hire difficult people. So I would go from Nowhere to Independence Day. I'd be walking down Independence Day. I'd see Judd Hirsch. I'm like, Judd, he's like, hey, kid, it doesn't get better than this. And run into Randy Quaid or see Jeff Goldblum and Bill Pullman, and everyone's giving hugs and just so happy to be there, knowing we're making this crazy movie about space aliens come down to blow everything up, and we're going to play it straight. We're going for it. Like, we're just like a big playground with adults. That's what that was. And then Gregg's set was like a little punk rock playground, like where we're not allowed to do the stuff we can do on the regular playgrounds. That's Gregg's playground. That's where we can do the stuff we can't do in the mainstream playground.
And your performance on Nowhere, the one thing when I was rewatching the movie, something that I really picked up on this time is just the sadness and the despair in your character in Nowhere. I mean, from Doom Generation, you've always had that vulnerability and softness, which is always so beautiful, but underneath the surface there's always that dark, obviously there's apocalypse looming, but there's always that I've got a bad feeling in the air, or as a portent or something bad is on the way. Where did that I tried to get it out of Gregg and he didn't give me a straight answer, but I was wondering, can you articulate where did that feeling come from?
It stems from internally, and I think Gregg had it too. I mean, he's in a pretty happy relationship now, but we were both at the time, especially making that movie. Again, it comes back to the line of Nowhere when it's like, you just want to find one person to love me So accept me for who I am, that I can love and accept them for who I am. And that seems to be the hardest thing in the world. So
Yeah.
when it comes to know her, the way I always saw it is that Montgomery turning into a bug and blowing up is now Dark has finally found the person, that one
Yeah.
perfect love. And like
Yeah.
most unfortunate tragedies, when you find that what you think is the perfect love, it blows
Yeah.
up in your face. It literally
Right.
blows up in your face. It's everything you wanted, everything you thought it was, and it's not that. It's not that at all. It was an illusion. And that's where the sadness came from. It's this idea of like, because we're all longing. And, you know, we hope we learn as we get older to make less mistakes. But I know for me, like to give you a perfect example of it, my friend was like, I always had these broken relationships. He's like, Jimmy, I love you, but no offense, your picker's broken. You choose poorly. And as long as you choose poorly, you're going to be unhappy. And it was like, oh, I want to love. So am I more in love with the idea of loving this person than really what love and accepting them for who they are and what we have? And that was a big thing for me to learn. And I think as younger people, it's not that we're not open to that, but it's more like this, we know what we want, what we need. We don't necessarily know how to give that yet. We're still learning that. And so Dark doesn't know how to give that. He needs to find that so he can have it given it to him so he can learn how to give it back.
Mm-hmm.
So he can learn how to give it back, to reciprocate that in the same way. He just wants to love so he can reciprocate it. And I think that for most of us, when you're in love or the desire to love and it's unreciprocated, there is a longing and an emptiness and a sadness there.
True, yeah.
But it's also what drives. It's the same thing that's the great motivator that drives you to find that love, to feel that hole in yourself, to fill that gap.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And final question, how does it feel now looking back at these movies and you finally got the Criterion treatment? Because I always felt in the archives of queer cinema, Gregg was such an outlier that he wasn't doing there was always a bisexual element. There was the kind of Gen X MTV speak and the comedy and the absurdity that I kind of think you either get it or you don't. And I think now everyone has really maybe a better critical appraisal of his work and stuff, deservedly so. How do you feel being on the inside of it?
I agree, because I think, I was actually having the conversation last night. There was a time after Splendor and Gregg was dating Kathleen, and everyone's like, how can you date a woman? It's like, is it about a woman? Or is it, are you really mad that he's dating women? Or are you not happy that he just found someone that he's happy? Can it not just be about being happy with somebody and like finding someone? And that really the key is it doesn't matter who it is, and it shouldn't matter. And that's what's important. And I think Gregg is always kind of in his movies that like bisexuality or pansexuality, I should say, is always existed. Because I know would be probably equated to being pan now. Like it doesn't matter who you are. I could love you. It's just it's who you are inside. It could be a man, it could be a woman. It doesn't matter. It could be you should be non-binary. But if you're a beautiful person, I'm going to fall in love with you, and I'm not going to be able to help that. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I think that that's the thing that Gregg was always, even if maybe I might be the one time I'd be articulating that for him, but it's that love doesn't know color, it doesn't know sex, it doesn't know any of those things. And when we get in the way of love like that, that's when we create tragedy.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so learn to accept people so we can accept ourselves. And if we can't accept ourselves, we'll never be able to accept others. So that's where it becomes the most important issue for us. And I think that's the issues we tackle over and over in the teen trilogy, knowing who you are and accepting that. And when we don't, what that can turn us into.
What is it like? Do you get many DMs from young fans who are discovering Gregg for the first time and stuff?
The young fans are well, that's what I have hope for the future, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Because they embrace these issues we're talking about, and they're not issues for them. They're very clear cut. They know who they are, how they feel, their connections to people, and they don't have the same sort of old fears, like probably generational fears is what they are.
Yeah.
They don't have those. So they're liberated from that. So they're able to push this agenda, much more forward, I feel. It's like, I was almost like passing the torch or handing it to them. I was like, okay, it's your job now.
Yeah.
And there's a much larger group of them who are much more akin to this perception and not only push this agenda, but they live this way. They live organically this way. And that's where it gives me hope.
Beautiful. I could talk for so much longer, but we got to wrap it up.
I could too, of course.
Thank you so much. I've loved your movies all my life. This is a real pleasure to talk to you.
I'm so flattered and blown away, and it's been such an incredible experience talking to you too. Really, you really understand the movies, and yeah.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, it means a lot to me and Gregg too. Thank you.
All right, from one Gen Xer to another. There we go.
I love you. Much love to you, Stephen.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good day.
All right,
Take
you
care.
too. Thank you.
Boom! That was me and James Duval. How nice is he? What a pure soul. That was wonderful. I love talking about shoegaze, and that Independence Day story was insane. Okay, I feel good. That was me and James Duval. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv, for my beautiful music, and you guys for listening. Remember, if you enjoy the pod, like and subscribe. The pod will always be free, but the bigger the pod gets, the bigger the guests get, and let's make that happen. Thank you, and I'll speak soon.